Hi, I'm Jennifer Goodman from the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. It's so great to have you as part of this first wave of virtual gatherings that we're doing at the Preservation Alliance. I think most of you know we're the statewide membership-based group working all over the state. Gatherings like this are certainly part of a new way of working, but part of our ongoing way to really want to help folks like you doing great work at the community level that helps the whole state, helps your community, helps the state, helps your regions. Just wanted to say thanks to those of you who are members. We hope that you'll become a member if you're not already. It helps us do our work. We help about 100 community projects every year, always trying to fill the toolbox so there's more connection to existing tools as well as new tools to help us get our work done, get more preservation investment happening, which we know even in difficult times, we've heard from a lot of people how preservation, those special places that all of you are working on,
I learned how to play.
Are really important and connect us. They're sort of places of comfort and solace and feelings of connectedness and longevity. Also, obviously, preservation investment, part of great support for local jobs, part of the economic vitality ingredients for our communities. So about today, I'm going to skip over introductions. You have all of you just because there's a lot of you, but I'll sort of try to characterize the group as we get going. And when you ask questions, make sure to introduce yourself later on during this program. We cast this as a session for best practices, good strategies for heritage commissions and local historic district commissions, and we definitely have both on the call. I think we have a mix of novices and folks that have been at this for a long time who have a lot of experience. And then I know we have a couple folks on the call who are just more generally interested in community preservation tools. So great to have you here with us too. Just a reminder that we are recording this session. Part of this virtual gatherings effort is to make this stuff available and the resource material connected to it to bigger audiences over time. So I just wanted to make sure you realized we were recording. Just also in terms of housekeeping and invitations, it's great to have Brandee Loughlin on the call, whatever this is, gathering. She's the National Register and Preservation Tax Incentive Coordinator for our public sector sister, the Preservation Alliance sort of government sister at the Division of Historical Resources, the State Historic Preservation Office. Some of you probably know her. She's moving into even more preservation planning work, right, Brandee, in the months ahead, and had previously worked at the City of Laconia in their planning department, so she comes with that great experience as well. Also really happy to have Becky Mitchell, who's a board member of the Preservation Alliance and long-time chair and now member of the Stratham Heritage Commission. Thank you, Becky. And Maggie Steer, who's back working with new initiatives and new projects with the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, which is fabulous. Maggie's there. Also is the chair of the Heritage Commission in Wolfboro. Correct. So the goal of this session is really, it's informal. I hope that you leave this session with a few more of your questions answered, hopefully just kind of a dose of practical advice, hopefully some inspiration, feeling like you know people you can connect to when you have questions over time, issues in the weeks and months to go ahead of us. And I'm sure there'll be things we can't answer during this call, but Preservation Alliance is happy to follow up. And I know some other people on this call are happy to be mentors as well. I was just going to start off by offering a couple of minutes of context on heritage commissions and historic district commissions. Brandee at the other end of this hour is offered to do a little advertisement about the Certified Local Government Program, as well as the Loose Plate grant program that comes out of her office at the Division of Historical Resources. And in the middle, we just thought we'd kind of divide up the time and do heritage commissions first, and then shift to local historic district commissions. I think there's some of you who probably want to be asking questions about the other, which is great. So it's great to have a combination of folks on this at this gathering. I can also imagine I'd love your feedback. We're gonna send out an evaluation afterwards. I can imagine we'll try to do some other virtual gatherings on these topics sooner than later in the weeks ahead. So get ready with your questions, and I hope you'll make suggestions and sort of share best practices as well as offer questions or concerns when we open this up. So just a couple minutes worth on the two kinds of commissions. Since 1992, Heritage Commissions have offered a way for local governments to identify, recognize, manage, and protect historic resources. They're the bodies that are town-wide. They have a town-wide purview. They also have broad powers, broad opportunities. And I think you'll hear, or you know, if you're a Heritage Commissioner, how different commissions in the state have organized themselves and prioritized different ways. Some are more purely advisory, play that role that's given to them in state statute. Others have become more involved in technical assistance, planning, promotion. Really, there's a different mix, and there is a broad set of powers, duties, and opportunities associated with Heritage Commissions. They're kind of a sister of conservation commissions. They also can hold property. They can hold property outright. I know that Wakefield, for example, has taken that action, holding property in fee, the whole thing. A couple of others have either held preservation easements or entertained the idea of holding easements. Heritage Commissions can also hold funds. I think a lot of you, even if you're not familiar with Heritage Commissions, know that kind of role relative to conservation commissions across the state. There's about over 50 Heritage Commissions. There's been a nice increase over time. I think Mount Vernon and Kensington are our most recent ones, and it's fun to have somebody from Kensington at part of our gathering here today. So that's kind of the younger of the municipal commissions that we've seen really kind of accelerating and doing great work in different ways across the state over time. The local historic district concept, that's an older tool, was in state law earlier. We've had them since 1963, so a generation or more older. I think, as most of you know, that's in a regulatory role, a regulatory board, typically a zoning overlay. Local historic districts should be connected to master plan objectives. And those commissions are really about overseeing properties within designated boundaries. Again, there can be variation there depending on what your local ordinance says regarding your local historic district. But typically those commissions are reviewing demolition, they're reviewing new construction, they're reviewing major alteration proposals that are coming from property owners within that certain district. And I think when they're working really well, I think of them as guarding investment, and they're really managing change, sort of shaping change within that certain historic area. 50, more than 50 is another good number for this kind of commission. There are some overlaps in communities where there's interlocking going on between the Heritage Commission and the Historic District Commission, but there's over 50 local historic districts around the state as well. So just in terms of a transition to starting to talk a little more, I'd say that from our perspective at the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, the challenges associated with these two kinds of commissions, they're kind of not unique. I think they're ones that you see in municipal bodies generally and in organizational health also generally. A lot of themes for me in terms of communication and sustaining healthy membership and effectiveness over time, matching skills and interests and local issues to what the the roles and jobs are for that commission. So certainly challenges, but also huge opportunities. I so appreciate the roles that folks on this in this gathering have, just doing that really important work on the ground. It's a great history of those commissions being such a powerful force in their community, and it's great to have a mix of folks who've been at it for a long time and some of the newbies. I think on this call we have connections, as I said before, to Kensington, which is one of the newest heritage commissions, as well as Laconia, that is the newest local historic district commission in the state just this past year. So that's sort of my setup. I'd like to, I'm gonna pay attention to time and shift to heritage commissions, do that for a while, and then shift to local historic districts. Just to get us started with the heritage commissions, I asked Becky Mitchell just to say a few words about some of her thoughts about effectiveness and kind of best practices, and then we'll open it up to other heritage commission questions and suggestions. Will, I know you wanted to say a few words too, which is great. So I'm going to shift it to Becky.
Hi, everybody. Stratham is one of the communities that set up a Heritage Commission very early on after the legislation was passed, but after 10 years, it was pretty much moribund, pretty much totally unknown in town. It was just a shell. And how did we get ourselves back on the map with the town government? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about today how you need to communicate with other elements in the town government, because you want to make sure that you're on a par with all the other similar groups operating as part of government. The first one, of course, is relationship with your select board. And allegedly, you're supposed to have a select board member as a member of the Heritage Commission. You want to make sure that you have good relations to that one person, but also think of the whole select board as a whole. And one of the overarching things that will pertain to every group that I talk about is you want to make sure that you're staying on top of their agendas and their minutes, because amazingly, things of great importance to heritage commissions can pass by unless you're keeping track of all those agendas and minutes, and you might want to delegate it among various members. Going back to the select board delegate to the Heritage Commission, you want to make sure that he or she has read the Preserving Community Character Handbook. Maybe Jennifer will talk a little bit more about that later. She's holding it up right now. Very important that they understand the full scope of the powers and responsibilities of heritage commissions. Moving on quickly, the next most important office for you to have good relations with is with the town planner and the planning board. Heritage commissions often act in close relations with your planning board, and the town planner often knows about projects that are coming toward the town that may have impact on historic resources, and you want to really hear about those even before they appear before a planning board if possible, so that you can make sure that you can participate and have input in the discussions going forward. It's amazing how much overlap there is between what the planning board does and what the Heritage Commission does. And we can bring to those planning board meetings a whole different set of skills and outlook, because many planning board members, they're all about knowing how sewer systems work and how building structures work, but they don't know too much about the historic resources in town and what the town's responsibilities are toward those resources. So we can actually help them do their jobs better, and you want to go into a meeting with that kind of attitude. Sort of a subset of that is your code enforcement and building inspector person. That's a good person to get to know, because sometimes they can, you can help them understand what the building code is in relation to impacts on historic buildings. And it's very important that you be able to talk to your code enforcement officer, building inspector, so that they're not inhibiting sensible historic preservation, rehabilitation codes. And anyway, it's good to have a friendly relationship with that person, because often they'll tip you off about things that are going on that haven't yet appeared in the public sphere. And Jennifer mentioned conservation commissions, and they are really kind of a sibling of ours as Heritage Commission members, and even some towns the membership overlaps. Sometimes conservation commissions can be very sensitive to historic issues and sometimes not. And we've even had some joint meetings. They meet on the same night we do, so we sometimes try to get together just to be make sure we all know what each other is doing, and that's a good idea as well. The other one is the Zoning Board of Appeals, and this can be really important that you stay on top of what's coming before them. I can give you a good example. I happened to look at the agenda and noticed that someone who owned one of our old one-room schoolhouses had a building contracting business in there, and before that there'd been a bicycle shop in there. And he was coming before the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Well, you know, I went and it was a great opportunity to make sure the zoning board knew that this is a historic building and people are interested in its history. And it was also a good occasion to connect with the owner, who also didn't know that much about the history of the building. And so it was a positive interchange that really let everybody know that the Heritage Commission supports commercial reuse of historic buildings, you know, but takes an interest to make sure that it's done appropriately. Lastly, get to know your town administrator really well. These are really busy people with a lot of things on their agenda and a lot coming at them in any given day. But that's a person you need to have a good relationship with. For instance, the town administrator will help you if you're going to want to introduce a warrant article for the town. They'll help you structure that so it's in the appropriate legal form. They can help you with budget planning. And by the way, you do want to have a budget, and you do want to make sure you're getting some money from the town. They should support you financially. Also, if your town hasn't yet adopted RSA 79D, the barn preservation easements, or 79E, which is for support rehabilitation and reuse of historic structures in community centers, you should talk to your town administrator as well as your select board rep about possibly bringing that to your town. And this is a good place to start.
Hey, Becky, there was a three-letter word that you mentioned to me before about this being a commission of, am I cutting?
Oh, yeah.
Something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, that you want to be the group that says yes. And often, sometimes heritage commissions can get stuff that nobody else wants to take on sort of shoved onto them, frankly. But you want to be the group that says, well, let me tell you why that isn't really appropriate to our mission, but here's what I think you can do, and let me get in touch with the person who I think can make this happen. So that you want to be the kind of commission that doesn't just, you know, scowl and say, no, we're not going to do that. You'll say, well, that's, you know, not really our cup of tea or our responsibility, but let's see how we can address it. And that's a way that, you know, one approach that's very important, that you you work as a team member with the whole government in the town, and you work to be known as a constructive organization.
Yeah, that's great. I think I'm going to shift now, if that's okay, Becky.
Yeah, it's hard to get me to shut up.
You can jump back in. Does anybody have any questions or kind of suggestions about the interplay of municipal government and some of the things Becky has been talking about in terms of great communication and being the commission of yes? Wendy?
So I'm not sure that this actually falls into Heritage Commission, but I have a preservation easement on a property in my town. I've reached out to DOT. I've reached out to New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. I've reached out to a lot of people since November, and I haven't gotten a response back. I really need to know what I'm supposed to do with this, because neither the DOT, who's the one that signed off on this easement on my property, it's not my property. I want to be clear. I'm not going to mention names, but the DOT signed off on it, and they say their hands are tied, but the property owner hasn't done anything with the building, and it's falling into greater disrepair. I want to know who I can approach now, because I'm not getting anywhere, and I need answers because I'm going to lose the building. So who do I escalate this to in order to get some movement? Because I'm thinking now is the best time, since everybody's and working from home for COVID-19. This might be the best chance for me to get the ball rolling, and who approach, since I've not had much success reaching out to the DOT and New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. I guess that's my question.
Who's the easement is between, who are the parties holding the easement in general terms? You don't have to name names, but just a DOT and a private property owner that's not you?
Can you say that again?
Who are the parties on the easement? But just in general, you don't have to name names.
It's the DOT, and I don't have it right in front of me, but in general, it's the DOT and the property owner. And it's a preservation easement, which when I read the preservation regulations, there's 4 different versions of preservation easement, and this does not go into, the easement doesn't go into which standard applies. And at this point, it's not going to be rehabilitation. It's going to be just preserving in place, basically. So I asked them to mothball the building. I pulled up all that information. Nothing is happening. And it's like the wheels are just completely halted. And I see that a lot of this is happening at the DOT level, because they're the ones that have pushed back and said, you can't move forward with this plan because it doesn't meet the requirements of such and such standard.
So I'm sorry if the Preservation Alliance wasn't responsive. I heard that in your feedback, and I'm sorry if that was true. I think there's a larger issue here that is relative to folks about making sure that memorandums of understanding or contractual agreements are monitored and executed over time. I think Brandee would know that in her agency, there have been mitigation agreements over time that then they're hard to make stick. So I think the themes of applying pressure to the stakeholders is one important thing, and trying to find win-win solutions is another one that has helped get some of these things unstuck in the past. There's also an issue that I know somebody else on the call had brought up, just about the really difficult issue of demolition by neglect. That's not exactly what you're saying, but it is.
That's where it's going.
That is one of the.
That's where it's going.
The stickiest issues in the whole preservation world, I think. And I would love to talk a little bit more about that. I think on your specific issue, I will open it up and see if anybody else has questions or suggestions. Then I would love to do a separate phone call with you and the right person at DHR, and then loop in DOT.
What did you say about where it's headed? I didn't understand. It's headed where?
Well, the building in question is not being maintained. That's your biggest issue, right, Wendy?
Yeah, it basically, I did speak with the owner. He came in, met with me and my vice chair, and he is stuck at this point because the proposals he's put forward, the DOT shot down, and they're the ones that basically hold the easement, is my understanding. And their pushback is that they have to meet the requirements of the standards. So the preservation standards, there's 4 of them. So the problem is he's willing to do something. He owns the strip of property where this building sits, but it seems like it's gotten to the point where it's so prohibitive that in my capacity as an HPC and HC chair, I'm not able to function. I'm not able to do anything, or the buildings have fallen into my purview. I'm at with this and I'm not getting a response from the DOT. I'm not getting a solution. Somebody named Laura, I think, is in charge of it now or something. And I mean, I don't have all this in front of me. I should have prepared better, but
Well, and I think, because this is going to go by so quickly this hour, I think I'd love people to respond to the kind of big ideas here. And then I think, a few of us should do a separate call and just really try to problem solve with the details in front of us. Did anybody?
Sounds like you do need help, and it sounds like if you have a budget, this might be an opportunity to bring in someone from the outside to give you a little assistance, to help you with those standards and to meet with the owner and find out what he does plan to do and guide him in the direction of something that would meet the standards, so that the DOT and DHR would be willing to take a look at his proposal.
So, okay. So that a couple years ago, he did have a legitimate proposal. It was about moving the building to be with another building. The reason they shot it down, the DOT shot it down, is because he wanted to turn the building. So what they're saying is that it needs to face the road the same way. So now my problem is that it's falling into such disrepair. The windows are falling out. There's vines growing all over it. It's becoming so prohibitive that we can't. It's demolition by neglect. And the owner wants to do something with it, but he doesn't feel like he can move forward.
Yeah.
He's like, and that makes me stuck. So I need someone to talk to get this moved forward. Because honestly, I've said this before, I will come to Concord and I will meet with various people because I got to get this resolved.
Yeah, no, that's great.
That's where I'm at with this.
Are you HDC or Heritage? Are you HDC?
And Windham, you have both, right, Wendy?
I'm both. I'm chair of
You're
both.
both. Okay.
Yeah, we are combined.
Combined, I see.
Yep.
So I
Thank you.
think, this does, you're not alone, and I'm glad you brought this up as a case study where it feels like there's different goals and they're working at cross purposes, and you just really need to sit down. And so I would loop somebody in from Brandee's office. As you're talking about this, I'm remembering the property. It's complicated, but it deserves a fix. So I'm glad you're raising it for sure. I am going to shift us now, though. Does anybody want to talk about demolition by neglect? I know it's an issue from Jaffrey. Anybody have any success kind of dealing with property owner challenges?
I also am interested in a solution. There's a property in town in Hampton Falls that is sort of going that way. There's no easement, or it's not a historic district, but it'd be nice to have some way of finding out if the owner can do something to keep it going or keep the house standing.
Yeah.
So.
Anybody have any success with that?
I do.
I'm gonna let Becky and then Wendy. Anybody else?
Okay.
I wish I had a success story, but I do not. We do have a demolition review ordinance in town, and we've certainly talked about adding demolition by neglect to that, and have been collecting examples of how other communities, mostly in Massachusetts. I don't think I have any good copies of ordinances in New Hampshire that cover this, but it's something that we really want to move on.
Becky, would there be a fine attached to that?
That's to be determined.
Okay.
But it definitely would have to have some kind of teeth in it that would be
exactly
enforceable. Yeah.
So I can send out some material about demolition by neglect as a follow-up to this. I'd say, one of the big themes kind of goes back to part of what Becky was saying at the top of this, just about being proactive and having good communication. And I think where we've seen it work in certain circumstances, all the right players are all over the property owner, so that you're trying to get to it sooner than later. You're building public support or political support for taking action if the property owner isn't going to be taking action. You have the best incentives in town, and you're ready and willing to help share those incentives as carrots to try to get the owner to act. Hopefully, if you get to the point of the owner still dragging their feet, the building getting in much, much worse condition, hopefully there's good language in your ordinances, both preservation ordinances as well as normal building ordinances, to be able to take action And certainly we've seen cases where there was enough political support for a municipality to put a lien on the building to actually do the fix and hopefully get paid back. So it's the old themes of trying to be proactive, trying to offer resources, finding that mix of carrot and stick to try to make it work. But there's literature and case studies and people struggling with this all over. It's a really difficult issue as well.
Could I mention something? The National Park Service has preservation briefs, and there's 50 of them. And I found that if you can, some of the property owners don't know what to do with their historic building. So if you present some of these solutions to them, for example, it tells you how to mothball the building to be used at a later time, which is what I wish had happened to the one that I'm most concerned about right now. And mothballing never happened because it was just not something that the HC had pursued the direction of the committee going, where I'm trying to bring it more into the realm that we're going to have a more prominent role and be more encouraging to providing solutions to the people that have these buildings. In my town, I've only lived here 6 years, and we've lost 7 buildings to neglect.
Oh,
They're going rapidly. So that's the biggest concern. And so mothballing is a big one. If you go into I don't know the number right off, but it's preservation brief. If you type in preservation brief and Google it, and you could say mothballing, then there's other things about how to maintain windows, etc.
Mothballing.
mothballing, yep, yep. We can
Okay.
send that link after. That's a great point. Just finding out what people need, because a lot of people are stuck and don't know what to do.
I like Maggie's suggestion of this is a good opportunity to bring in a consultant. And also I think it's an opportunity to work with your code enforcement and building inspector department to support you in this and not losing an important building. These buildings are assets to the town. They're sources of tax revenue, and the town has an interest in maintaining them.
Yeah.
So the problem is that it's sort of, unfortunately in my town, the HDCHC has not been maintained in a way that we are respected as an equal to the planning board, to the zoning board, to the building inspector, the code enforcement. They just see us as a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to rectify that. So this is what I came into, and I've only been chair for a year, and I'm trying to get everybody back. I mean,
Well,
problems internally with CDD that I can't even go there. It's crazy.
Well, then I think we need to proceed with the rest of this discussion, because I think the whole direction of this discussion is addressing how to make heritage commissions and district commissions most effective. And I think, let's continue to work on that line.
Yep, yep. So being the commission of yes, doing great projects, taking the time to celebrate those projects, I think are really important. I mean, there's a whole body of work out there that heritage commissions have been doing beyond the kind of advising and positioning and supporting that we've been talking about so far. I think we do need to turn to local districts pretty soon, but Bill had a question, and if anybody wants to pipe up with an example or two, Will, we might have to ask you to do a really short something if you want to too, but Phil next, who had his hand up. Thanks, Phil.
Just a real quick question. I'm with the Bartlett Historical Society and the president of that group. We do not have a historic commission or heritage commission in the town here. So I'm learning. But when you say you're the heritage commissions are the commissions of yes, so to speak. I used to be the chairman of the planning board here in town, and I agree. We used to, when I was the chairman, I used to try and do everything we could to get a project that someone wanted to do doable. Okay. There were times, however, when somebody was just way out of bounds. And how do you deal then with projects like that, where I know you're trying to say, if you do it, adjust a few things and make it work. But if somebody's that far out of bounds, does the Heritage Commission have the authority to say no?
Heritage commissions aren't regulatory boards.
Okay.
But they can influence for sure, and we've certainly seen a lot of examples where Heritage Commission said no, or Heritage Commissions offered great alternatives and then did the education and advocacy work they needed to get to success. Will it ask a question to everybody? Did you see, I don't know if people are looking at the chat about Heritage Commissions. Is it appropriate for them to provide letters of support for state legislation? I think the short answer is definitely yes. I don't think you're tipping into a lobbyist role if you're not directly influencing the outcome of something. So a letter testifying on a relevant bill is wonderful. And you can make a huge difference in outcomes in Concord, for sure. Can't hear you yet, Will. You're still muted, Will. Oh, so sorry. Do you want to type some more?
No.
Sorry, Will, we can't hear you. Does anybody want to pipe in with one of their favorite Heritage Commission projects or two, and then we're going to shift?
I just wanted to add, since nobody's saying anything, I'll fill the void here. I did want to
Still
add
here, still listening.
Good.
that the encourage heritage commissions to remember that you're not just looking at buildings, that you should think about the town's historic resources very broadly, including things like views and landscapes and stone walls, and even within your town, certain trades or occupations that help to define the historic character of your town. We play a very active role in supporting agriculture in our town, for instance. And we view that as part of the mission.
I was in the wrong email. I have 4 different emails, so. Oh, okay. I found it.
That's a great point, Becky. Not just typical buildings, but the tout ensemble and other pieces of it, like agriculture and views. That's a great point.
Can I ask Becky a quick question? Just back to your original discussion about keeping up with other town groups, how do you manage that logistically? Like, do you have liaisons that are assigned to the other groups to go to the meetings, or does one person do it? Because we have a problem even just getting everybody to our monthly meetings.
Well, we're assisted by the fact that everybody in town can see online, can sign up to get the agendas and minutes sent to you, so that every member of our commission can see those. And we make sure that we only meet once a month, but we make sure that every time we meet, we review especially planning board activities. And we have a representative from the planning board who's a member of our group. I think if we started seeing higher volume, we would probably sort of delegate, if someone was particularly interested in being a liaison to the Conservation Commission, they could do that. But we haven't found that we've had to, institutionalize anything really. It just sort of happens organically. Okay. It's like, hey, did you see that agenda? Who's free Tuesday night to go to that zoning board meeting kind of thing.
So jumping around a little bit, I know that Jason from Effingham had asked about kind of a roadmap for how to get a Heritage Commission adopted. Becky did mention the handbook that the Preservation Alliance put together, Preserving Community Character, and I'm gonna, in my follow-up to you, I'll send links to part of our website that has pieces of that already on it, or you can buy the whole handbook easily from the Preservation Alliance as well. That does have kind of the words and some coaching about the steps that you need to do to adopt a Heritage Commission. It also has that for local historic district commission. I think in terms of the advocacy education piece, certainly the Preservation Alliance, and I know some of you as part of this gathering are happy to mentor relative to the specific planning and execution of that. Brandee's office as well has folks helping on the Heritage and Historic District front. So the handbook says the steps and has all the citations to the New Hampshire laws that you're following, sets up the pieces in terms of the commission membership, warrant articles, et cetera, et cetera. But then obviously there's the whole layer of how you organize around that to make it a success. I guess other pieces just to mention the membership of those commissions, both the Heritage and Historic District Commissions are obviously always really important to have different kinds of expertise that you need to be able to meet your goals. And then just the refreshing in that organizational issue of making sure you're replacing leadership, you're bringing new people on, you can keep a healthy organization to make it through all different kinds of times for your operations.
I just wanted to mention, I think Phil brought up the question about regulatory. HDC is more regulatory.
Yep. Yep.
And
Right,
the other
in
thing I
terms of
wanted to
saying
mention.
no. Good point. Yep. Yep.
Right. And then the other thing is that the historical cultural resource list, I don't know where that falls into everything, but my town has one and it's extensive. And that's where you can document all of your historical assets in the town, which is a lot of work. I'm revising mine right now. And that is a great resource because then you can give that to your community development department, the planning board, conservation commission. And if a lot comes up for a plan or somebody applies to do something to the property and it's on that list, they need to inform the historic district and heritage commission so that they can be involved. So that sort of starts the ball rolling, at least in my town, where when it works right, that we are informed and step in if there's a historic asset being.
Which town is that?
Windham.
Town?
Windham.
I'm in Windham.
Which town?
I
Wyndham.
can't hear that.
Windham.
Thank you.
And there's surveys where to start or knowing what you have. So I'm glad you talked about that, Wendy. And we've got different models and our friends at Division of Historical Resources do about the different ways to pull that off. Julianne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, a quick question that may segue to Brandee. Again, I am a newbie, so I don't know a lot about this, but so I'm at Kimball Jenkins in Concord, which is in a historic district that's also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And my question is, I was wondering if there's any value to updating the National Register listing, or if that in itself is a historic document of like the time when it was filed. Because when I was reading ours, I think it was filed, I want to say in the 70s.
Probably, yeah.
And there's new knowledge and viewpoints about specifically Native Americans and the relationship of Native Americans to the area that that our property is on, that I feel like that listing would benefit from additional information. I don't know if that's like an educational opportunity and we can talk about this at another time, but I was just like, curious if that ever happens.
That's a great question. Take it, Brandee.
So the documents, some of them, yes, are historical in their own right in the sense that they're very old, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be updated. They don't just go away, they're kept somewhere, but you can update a National Register nomination in a couple of different ways. It's a district, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no local district, but it's also individually listed on the National Register, I think.
Okay. So if it was a National Register district, those get changed and updated fairly regularly with boundary increases when you want to start to try to include additional buildings. Usually that happens when buildings that weren't old enough to be included when it was first listed have now aged into eligibility. But with an individual building, you can also do an update to that property. And I mean, as we all know, buildings change over time, for better or for worse. And it is it's a great tool to document and use as an educational tool, as well as a planning tool. So if you're responsible for a historic building, or have any kind of responsibility for it, the National Register documentation can be very helpful in helping you to make decisions about how to care for that building. It doesn't have to take the form of a National Register update. You can do a building assessment, which the Alliance has a program to help with. But the National Register documentation can be really helpful if you wanted to apply for grants or something in the future, because then it's documented about as far as the significance of the building or different areas or features of it in a National Register nomination versus just a building assessment. So, I mean, my answer is always yes, definitely. I mean, they're great documents to have. That being said, you know, I wouldn't want to encourage folks to spend funds on something like that if, you know, the building needs work or you know, definitely prioritize. But it is a great document to update if you have the resource and drive for it.
So it sounds
for
like
that
it's more
question.
important to like, you know, use it as an educational opportunity to broaden the understanding of like the significance of the region from like a historical context versus putting time into actually updating this document that nobody might ever look at.
Well, you could do, I mean, you could do kind of an updated, you could do some kind of update to any kind of document, and it could be put into the National Register form so that it's officially documented somewhere in addition to what you might want to do. But yeah, I mean, views of what was important have changed over time too, so.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's a great opportunity to celebrate too, Julianne. If you have a story to tell, then certainly you want your constituents to know about it. You don't want it just to go to the National Register in Washington and be part of a record that many people would never look at. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to write it up and do the research and want to share the story anyway, then why not do both?
Mm-hmm. So, well, Brandee has the floor. Sorry, I'm sorry. Well, Brandee has the floor. Actually, Brandee, I'd love if you talked a little bit about CLG and Moose Plate. I'm just trying to be sensitive to time. And then we can talk. Jason asked a very specific question about local historic districts, and I want to make sure I get to that as well. So maybe some of you can stay on over after 1, but I wanted to kind of do most of what we said we were going to do by 1 o'clock. So Brandee, why don't you just move into those 2 topics and give little updates or advertisements if you can.
All right, I'll be pretty quick, and I think Jennifer has plans to send a follow-up email with links to these programs as well, so you can look at them more in depth on our website. But 2 programs that we oversee in my office are the CLG program and our Moose Plates grant program. The CLG program is certified local government. Each state has different standards for what they decide will fall under their certified local government program. The major criteria for our state is that you have to have a historic district and a historic district commission that oversees that. That can be a heritage commission that oversees it. I know that there are dual roles often. But that's the main criteria. Being a CLG does enable you to apply to the CLG grant program that we have. It's not a huge pool of money, but it is somewhere around $65,000 to $70,000 a year. And that mostly is for planning, survey, inventory, that kind of thing. So a lot of towns who don't have a comprehensive survey, like Wendy was referring to, which is a fabulous tool to have. A lot of towns don't have that. You could get funds to help you get that process started, or finish it, or enhance it, or update it, or whatever the case might be. So the CLG program is a very interesting program. Nadine Miller in my office oversees that. She also does consult with those communities about preservation planning issues too. So that's kind of an access for CLGs. The Moose Plate program is for our office anyway. There are other offices that have their own Moose Plate programs, but we oversee grants to nonprofits and municipalities, and these are mostly for bricks and mortar programs. So actual physical changes, you know, new, if it can fund it, a new roof or windows or, you know, things like that. And that is open to any municipality or nonprofit. So heritage commissions or HDCs can certainly apply to that program as well. And Amy Dixon is the contact in our office for that. So Jennifer will make sure to link to those, and please definitely reach out if you guys have questions about those. Oh, one more plug. I wanted to do one more quick plug. For those of you who are not familiar with the Federal Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program, that is the program that I oversee and do most of my work with in the office. And that is for income producing properties, so office space, retail, residential rental, that kind of thing. If anybody has questions about that program, if you have somebody, a property owner who might be on the fence between rehab or demo of a building, this could be something that could sway their finances. So if anybody has questions about that program, please contact me.
Good.
Jennifer, can you hear me now?
We can. Woo!
All right. Hey, I just want to say about a quick 15 seconds of time. If I could clone myself to what Becky was talking about and the initiatives that they're doing, we're trying to do very similar things within Amherst. And one is we're trying to do a much better job communicating with the other boards and commissions. But in our town, it is so hard dealing with our planning board over the past year and a half, that they were, the town actually voted in March to have a citizens warrant article that went, that if passed would have the planning board members voted upon, vice being appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So this past year, that article passed, and now in the future, our planning board members are going to have to, stand election and be voted upon.
Oh.
So it's interesting to get those relationships going. And I agree, having a Heritage Commission member that goes to all the meetings if possible, because you learn so much from the Board of Selectmen. You get to see the agendas, ACC, the conservation commissions, and it's just a good thing to do to communicate. And I guess, Rebecca, you did a great job there. That was really good, summarizing the things that a good Heritage Commission would do. So well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Sorry we couldn't hear you before.
Yeah, I figured it out now.
Good. There's a side chat from Jason about a Heritage Commission assuming the duties of a Historic District Commission, which is allowed by law. And I wrote this citation over there, and it is in the handbook about how that can happen. Do people have specific Historic District Commission suggestions or questions or concerns? We touched on a lot of them. Go ahead, Beverly.
What can a Heritage Commission do, if anything, about preserving old houses in town? I know you get tax relief if you preserve your barn, but you don't get anything if you do that to your house.
Yep. Anybody have any ideas?
Well, 79E is an option, but and you have to adopt it. And we had a warrant article. We haven't yet managed to have our town meeting, but we had a warrant article to extend it beyond the 2 more commercial areas so that it would cover any National Register building anywhere in town. So that's, again, you'd have to be listed on the state or national or eligible for that. It's difficult, definitely.
So age doesn't matter?
One thing that we're looking into here is making it more, having more flexibility in terms of uses that would make some properties more economically viable.
I agree to that.
If they weren't just restricted to residential uses. I mean, this would have to be very, have a lot of protections in there, but to start looking at your zoning and what can help to make some of those properties more viable so they would be maintained.
Correct.
That's
or there's
a point. So zoning and market issues, 79E, you mentioned there's, I think only Concord right now has adopted these extra provisions where you can get the property tax relief for historic residential structures. That's what Becky was just talking about. There is information on our website about that, or we can help with the specifics.
Okay.
I think there's
Thanks.
good old-fashioned education and promotion, a theme of this call. back to what Wendy said about people not knowing what to do, what they can do, how to find referrals to good contractors, what mothballing means. That's a side point. I love local awards programs, I have to say. That backs to the theme of being the group of yes, celebrating great work, celebrating homeowner stewardship over time, celebrating a great rehab and paint job. It's not the same as having money, I get that, but could be an relatively easy and fun thing for a commission to do as part of their positive campaigns.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
So
That's
I've
something
actually,
that, oh, I'm sorry.
sorry,
Like a-
I was going to say, sometimes it's nice to send a letter from the chair of the HDC to people who have actually rehabilitated their barns and their houses, just commending them. And that goes a long way, just appreciating the efforts they did, because a lot of that, in the broad scheme of things, it's cheaper for them to tear down the building than to rehabilitate it and add ADA accommodations. And that is the fight that we're constantly having. So.
That's a great point. A letter is even easier than an awards program, but it's back to that recognizing good work, supporting good work.
It would be nice.
Yeah. I know I've heard of welcome kits, when new people come to buy a house in the historic district, the body, either the HDC or maybe it's another subgroup or whatever, just they're kind of all over the new owner in a nice way. Here's resources, here's a complimentary membership to the Historical Society or the Preservation Alliance, here's a link to the referrals of contractors and suppliers that you might need, here's a newsletter. All that kind of stuff can go a long way and doesn't have to be a lot of work.
So I didn't say before, my name is Megan and I'm from the Kensington Heritage Commission, and we're new as of last year. So this is one of the things that I'm interested most about learning more about Heritage Commissions. How do we get people in town to sort of back us or follow us? We've created like a Facebook page so we can share some of the things that we're talking about at our meetings, but I don't think any of the town members know that we exist yet, and we'd love to get the word out there. How can we best do that, but without overburdening ourselves at this moment, because we also have not a lot of capacity to get things done yet, but hopefully
Maggie,
in the
do you
future
have favorite things that you've done in Wolfboro?
Oh, I have to unmute myself.
No,
Can you hear
unmuted.
me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think one of the things you really should do is try to educate your members. So we bought everybody a copy of the Preservation Handbook.
Mhm.
I think it's a really good idea to go to the selectmen's meeting and speak to any issues that relate to historic resources in your town. Becky's suggestions were great. Just work through all of the other boards and find a project that seems doable. Jennifer likes the phrase low-hanging fruit. But find something that you can do that is not controversial, that will get you a little bit in the public eye, and don't expect that other people are going to toot your horn for you. You have to talk about these things. And I really feel strongly that communication is so vital, whether it's in a town newspaper or a town website. I think it's great that you have a Facebook page. Becky has other ideas.
I would say one thing that really gave us a boost and continues to boost us is that we try to give every year a public program, and Maggie came and contributed to one of our ones that was a lot of fun. There's actually a great thirst out there. People are interested in local history. They want to go to a fun evening. We did it on Friday nights in February. And the one that we did that Maggie participated in is we took an idea that actually started with the British Museum in London. Of course, think big, right? But we did it where we had people bring in things from their attics or from their houses and had stories behind them. But we've also done them we did a program on the history of taverns in Stratham, and this combined very nicely with the story of a guy who bought a historic National Register tavern that was foreclosed. It was, you know, really like the situation you're facing, Wendy. But luckily, thank God, he bought it and renovated it. So we tacked his story of renovation onto that. And so we gave him recognition, but everybody came and learned about all the old taverns and what they did in town. Sponsoring an annual, don't try to do too much, but we've found that almost every year there's some topic that we want to push, and we can come together, we can put together an entertaining program that we fill the big hall at the fire station every time we do this, and it creates a lot of goodwill.
That's good.
Thank you.
How about three more? How about somebody who hasn't had a chance to talk yet? How about 2 to 3 more questions or suggestions, and then we'll wrap. Anybody?
I had a suggestion for Megan in Kensington. So I run a Facebook page called Positive Preservation. And so I'm also very aware of historic real estate transactions. So I'm still, even though we bought our old house, I still love looking at real estate. So I would take notice of when a particular old house that I had my eye on closed, and I would mail, my best friend became Vistaprint. So I designed a little bit of not like a logo, but I grabbed one of their pre-made cards, and I just welcomed the person to their old house. And if you want to get on Facebook and start, you know, requesting project ideas, or say, hey, I did this project and it was really nice. Or I also had the idea, so for our historical society that's still currently disbanded, but I have a lot of great ideas for them. So like, if you want to get noticed in your town and have them notice who you are, you could always send out something like that, like a card or a flyer with whatever logo you come up with, and say, hey, would you like to have your house featured in a calendar, and stuff like that, stuff that you could get yourself noticed with. I love the calendar idea, because then you can display and showcase all the old houses in your town, and everyone could buy it. It could support your historical society or heritage commission funds sold. So that's an idea that I always have in the back of my mind.
Part of our problem is we have no budget at the moment, so.
You should have asked for funding, yes.
We're working on it.
Okay, that's an idea I have in the back of my head that I want to do, because I'm a photography nerd too, so I can't wait to get out and photograph a lot of the old houses in town and ask the owners if they want to be featured in the town calendar.
That's cool.
Yeah, one of the quick things that we're doing to get a little bit more of a communications around town is hopefully everybody's aware that this is the 100th anniversary year of the passage of the 19th Amendment. So we're going to do something in September to honor that passage of women's suffrage, and then talk about Amherst WMD, Women Making a Difference. So hopefully that will get a lot of interest in town, along with our other little projects that we're working on. But it's an opportunity that's going to happen this year.
That's great. Anybody else? Althea had something and she hasn't had a chance to say anything yet.
I just want to make an observation, and that is that I live in Concord, and I've noticed in Concord and other places, the Conservation Commission often seems to have more power, more publicity, and more money. Like ours actually has money, and they buy land, and they're doing deals, and so in my next life, maybe when I have time, I think it would be really interesting to study what the conservation world did to make conservation more popular or more approachable, or just get it out in people's minds. And we could apply some of those things to preservation. I think preservation has come a long way. I mean, the Preservation Alliance has done a lot. People really love the events and everything, and I think that's been great, but it seems like we still are a little
playing catch up. Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that. And we certainly talk about that all the time, and we could do another hour on that for sure.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, looking to that model and what's working for them to apply on the local level as well as the statewide level. You know, in a different way, doing what Becky was doing and describing in terms of making the historic conservation connection, I think in your daily work is really important too. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to say anything yet, who has a burning question or suggestion?
I have one quick question maybe.
Yeah.
Is there any way to get people in town to realize the importance of keeping historic buildings? In other words, there's got to be an economic benefit. You know, I look at them and I think they're wonderful, but other people think that's old, and why do I want one of those?
I think it's who you're talking to, right? We can share some of what we have just in terms of trying to move people or decision makers based on the dollars and cents of it all. I guess
I'm
it
thinking
depends
planning
whether
board,
it's,
basically.
yeah, a planning board. Yep. Yep.
I think there's a lot on the Preservation Alliance website that is of interest there. And also, I would recommend the joining the National Trust for Historic Preservation. They have a magazine that you get every month.
I am.
Yeah, it's really great. I find a lot of good, just like ideas about how to talk about things and you know, sort of how to catch people's attention.
Jennifer, remind me of the name of the keynote speaker at the last preservation conference, because his
Tom Mays. Yeah, Tom Mays from the National Trust, who has a whole blog series. Yep.
Yeah, and his book covers it beautifully.
Yeah.
Also, that question.
Okay.
But it's yeah. So that's a source. We don't have a lot of local data, unfortunately.
That's what I'm after. Yeah, local.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen examples before, like if it's a tax-based issue, if the planning board saying, oh, we have to let this be demolished so that, because this next replacement building is gonna
bring more taxes.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to dig into the numbers, and we could think about some consultants that could help create that, or at least create a good enough story, you know, that with conditions feels appropriate to share. Yeah, so there's the tax-based issue. Local jobs, of course, is something we always talk about. Depending on where you are, the tourism visitor connection is a strong one.
No, we have that.
Yep.
But
but being able to quantitate it.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the visual all day long, but if people don't appreciate it and then it disappears, they don't know what they're going to lose.
I guess the other thing is to have, you know, the experts, the voices that you think the planning board will hear, making that argument, even if you don't have all of the numbers to back it up, you know, based on my professional experience, XYZ kind of thing.
And it's also important to have, we haven't discussed the town master plan, but that can be, if you get the importance of preserving historic resources baked into your master plan, then that's something you always have in your back pocket and can waive at any planning board meeting.
Yeah, good point.
You can try, yeah.
Well, I feel like we've come at it from a lot of different directions and not seamlessly in one order, but I feel like we've hit a lot of classic themes and challenges that we all have, whether you're in a historic district or a local historic district or a heritage commission, dealing with issues of education and economics and property owners that aren't always heading in the direction that you want them to head in.
Can we do another one?
One more and then let's close.
One more, about 5 minutes.
Go ahead. Was that Beverly again?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about, can we do another Zoom meeting?
Oh.
Yes.
We can. So maybe that's the catalyst for me to close and say that we do have an evaluation that takes 2 minutes to fill out that I'd love you to fill out. That's going to be in this much discussed follow-up email. I've been talking about it throughout the whole hour. I'm hearing that there's interest in doing more. Does it matter if it's heritage and historic district focused? It sounds like it's more even on just the fundamentals of communication, advocacy, getting to yes. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it can be both.
Okay. Well, yes. It's not simple, and we, the Preservation Alliance, really appreciates all that you're all doing on the ground, making this stuff happen, and appreciate our partners like our Brandee and other colleagues at the Division of Historical Resources. There were like 5 other times I could have pointed to Brandee to have her pitch in too, but to be continued. So we will do more on this topic, and the follow-up will have an evaluation for you to fill out and some of these links we've been talking about. And I think that's it. Stay well, stay healthy, and thanks for all that you do.
You too. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.